The shareholder meeting, Tesla was, in general, I think people thought it was disappointing because it wasn't really addressing some of the more imminent problems that Tesla is having. The stock is down almost 30% for the year. Clearly, there's a problem with sales, with growth, things like that. Instead, Musk was talking about long-term growth. Now, we at Orange Capital Partners are certainly also frustrated with the performance of Tesla, but we are actually pretty encouraged by the new pathway that Musk is offering. And this is a very typical Elon Musk move that as soon as you think you understand Tesla, he just opens up new doors, new pathways, and you just realize, wait a minute, I never thought about it this way. So what he opened up in this particular shareholder meeting, this is not new, but it just crystallized to us is that Tesla is actually morphing into a decentralized compute company, a decentralized compute company that will offer transportation, that will offer idle inference for AI, and actually also energy infrastructure. Let me elaborate on this. This is a Not Even Wrong podcast. It's June 15, 2024. This is Krim Delco. For the year, we are down 3.9%. The market is up 13.9%. We're underperforming by 17.8%. So the shareholder meeting took place. I'm not going to discuss all the details. It's highly covered in all the news outlets out there. Tesla won a very important vote that they moved to Texas, which we discussed in one of the previous posts. Please just check that, why we think that is really important for Tesla and corporate America. But now let's talk about the company. And just for listeners that are relatively new to this podcast series and to Orange Capital Partners in general, we do this with one purpose, which is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So this is no investment advice. Please do your own work and don't use this channel to contact us for things like capital or anything like that. We're closed anyway. We're not taking new capital. So this is not a marketing post by any means. It is hopefully meant to help people understand what's going on and how we think about investing, and maybe people can learn a few things about that. So this is the idea, right? So now we've been invested in Tesla for, I would say, around a decade now. Actually, no, more than a decade. I'm sorry, quite a bit more than a decade. And what's really interesting about the company is that every now and then the goalposts change. In other words, it's like this path that the company is on, right? Most companies are on a certain path. Coca-Cola has been selling sugar water for, I think, more than 100 years. Now, of course, it has changed, and they defined their business eventually as competing with the tap. In other words, any thirst needs to be quenched by Coca-Cola, right? But it's still kind of the same type of business, right? Selling drinks, whether it's to retail, whether it's online, all these little things, they have their meaning, of course, but Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola, right? Then you have companies like, let's say, Walt Disney, right? Disney, it's an entertainment company. It's a company that starts with cartoons, but then morphs into making movies, doing all kinds of things that help people entertain themselves. And, certainly Disney has changed. They have parks now, but Disney is still Disney. You wouldn't consider Disney anything else but an entertainment company. Now, enter Tesla, right? Like, Tesla starts by making electric cars. Then they become a software company because you realize, wait a minute, this is a software-defined car. Then they become an AI company because they want to understand how the car can drive itself. And they drive FSD, which by now, I think FSD version 12.4, in my opinion, is almost there, right? And now we're going into the next phase, which is a decentralized compute company, which means that you order transport, you order compute, or you order energy to do transport or compute or other things through a Tesla decentralized network. Now, whether that network is in a sort of permissionless way, like with crypto or not, that's a whole different conversation. It's possible that there's another fork in the Tesla story at some point where they become permissionless. I think the flirt with crypto has been questionable with Tesla. It's been all right, but and it's a company that, let's not forget, SpaceX very early on has been using crypto technology in a sense that they had to solve the Byzantine generals problem very early on. When you shoot rockets up in space, you want to make sure that all the systems work. You have redundant systems, and you solve the problem of having discontinuous information or inconsistent information coming from, let's say you have three systems and one of them sends different types of information than the other two, so you will just go with the two versus the one. So that's kind of the first steps of solving the Byzantine generals problem. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I think the Tesla and SpaceX ecosystem are very familiar with Byzantine general problem type situations, and crypto is the modern day application of the Byzantine generals problem. So I'm just saying that there's possibility that we have a fork towards permissionless like Akash, but let's not go into that in this particular episode. Let's just talk about the decentralized nature of compute. So again, whether you order a car, which is a robotaxi, is you're basically hiring compute and a bunch of hardware on top of it, of course, to get you from A to B. But it's the compute that really makes the difference. Today, the cost of transport is primarily the driver. Whether it's you or an Uber driver, the cost is the driver. The time, the human labor of driving. In other words, you need human compute to drive. You need compute to drive because it's a complex problem. You can't just, obviously you need compute. You need intelligence to drive a car. End of story. Now, you can have that in a sort of you can have that, currently this is solved in two ways. One way is a centralized way. You can take a bus or a train or a plane, or you can do it completely decentralized, but not in a network. You can do it sort of in an atomic way. You buy a car, you drive from A to B. The decentralized network is offering compute from a decentralized network, again, from a network of robotaxis that can leverage the network and get you compute. And there's really a couple of things that a centralized compute network brings. It's cost, availability, reliability, efficient pricing, better resource allocation, better alignment of energy resources, and robustness. I'm going to discuss all of these things in detail, but there's a lot of advantages, because no matter how you slice it and dice it, the ability to leverage a network, if managed properly, is always better than some sort of centralized or atomic planning way. Just look at financial markets. The wisdom of the crowd is always better than one person deciding what something should cost, or what the price should be. But it's not just the transportation, it's not just the robotaxi network. There's also the availability of idle inference compute. And that's pretty important, because right now, most of the work in the compute world is done on the training side. The inference side is coming online too, and Tesla is certainly not going to be the only one offering inference compute, but Tesla's inference compute is very efficient because it has to be, because it's on the edge. And it's really good right now. Now, again, things change. It's a moving target. We could have different developments of requirements, different models to be inferenced from, and things like that. But in general, what Tesla's doing right now, think of it that way. Like you have you have FSD, which is a trained model with lots of weights that are able to, to react on pretty much any kind of situation that a car is exposed to. And the way the inference compute works is you have an input of camera data, and think of it like this, this is an input comes, like you see the scene, and now you have to go through the model and find the right weights that give you the proper actuator activation so the car does the right thing given the scene. This is how Tesla inference compute works. And the holy grail of inference compute on the edge is to do this in a compute efficient manner. And Tesla has solved that problem. According to Musk, several times. I think if I look at the MLSys conference that I attended about a month ago, this is one of the biggest problems in machine learning systems technology, whether it's hardware or software. It is, how can we do more efficient compute? We have gigantic models with lots and lots of parameters. And when we do inference, we don't want to have to go through the whole model all the time. We want to be more efficient. Tesla has solved that problem in a relatively efficient way. The proof's in the pudding, of course. The car's driving, not using a tremendous amount of energy resources while it's driving. So we have availability of efficient inference compute, we have availability of transportation, and let's not forget, we also have availability of decentralized energy resources, whether it's solar roof, or the energy storage products, which together can be morphed into a decentralized energy product. This offers several advantages. Cost, of course. By offering idle capacity, Tesla will be able to price lower. Even Akash, for example, according to Greg, Akash is able to price H100 availability, compute availability by 5 to 6 times less than Amazon does. Now this is because they're using idle capacity, right? Once you start using idle capacity, no matter where it is and how it is, you start coming into situations where you can really price low because the idle capacity makes no money for you. Availability, a decentralized network, if managed properly, can increase availability. Of course, this is an optimization problem. This is a classical queuing, networking, engineering problem where you have certain nodes, certain availability nodes, and then you have demand, and you want to optimize this. But in a network, particularly with idle capacity, you should, in principle, get better availability than, let's use AWS as a sort of counterexample, just simply because the network's more flexible. It adapts, it grows, it shrinks with the demand, and therefore it should be more available. Efficient pricing, this is, all these things are obviously interconnected, right? With a more dynamic network that grows and shrinks with demand, pricing should also be more efficient and also perceived more fair. Akash is a permissionless network where pricing is sort of done in a crypto way, which is even more fair, if you will. But again, we don't want to go down that route right now, that fork. But even if it's centrally planned by Tesla, I believe that the pricing will be interesting. And I think this is just as a tangent. People always talk about, okay, what are the jobs of the future? And as a trained economist, I can say, you know what? Designing marketplaces, designing decentralized pricing mechanisms, which is really a decentralized marketplace, those will be interesting jobs in the future. People need to think harder about how to design marketplaces, or let's say the economist at AWZ, I forgot his name, he calls it mechanism design. Like, those are the kinds of things that will become more and more interesting. How to price stuff like this, where you want to make sure that the suppliers get compensated, you want to make sure that the customers get what they need at the right price. Those are interesting problems to solve. Better resource allocation, again, this is in conjunction with efficient pricing, availability, cost. Better resource allocation, in my opinion, also means that you have, because of the efficient pricing and because you're in a decentralized network, you can kind of move supply and demand wherever, particularly supply, where the demand is, sometimes demand where the supply is. And I think I want to mention better alignment of energy resources. This is really an important point, because we already see in crypto that, let's say, stranded energy assets can be used more efficiently for Bitcoin mining. But you could have another type of efficiency here, which is, for example, take a very dense populated place like Palo Alto, with lots of rooftop solar, storage, and Tesla availability, right? So in that world, we could have a much more efficient allocation of energy and inference resources, because we have the solar power very close to the car. In other words, the photons can go straight into the inference chip. That's my point. So this would be one example. So it's kind of almost the inverse of stranded assets, where you're not in the desert somewhere, obviously, loading up on photons and then moving those photons to the Teslas in Palo Alto. That would be inefficient. Or you move the Teslas to the desert, park them there, and then have inference compute. None of that stuff. That's way too expensive. That wouldn't be efficient. But what you could have is, again, in a place like Palo Alto or Marin County, where there's lots of solar, lots of storage, and lots of Teslas, you could have more efficient inference compute. Finally, robustness. Everything that I just said will help towards having just more robust network, right? It's there when you need it. It's priced properly. It doesn't fail because it's decentralized. You always have access to it. You have better alignment of demand and supply. You're always at the latest forefront of availability, whether it's H200 or whatever, all of these things. It's much easier to have access to these types of resources in a decentralized compute network. So to summarize, I think the shareholder meeting of Tesla actually, in our opinion, was very interesting because Musk is opening a new fork here, which is a decentralized compute company where compute resources, transportation resources, and energy resources can be offered in a decentralized manner, which offers enormous amounts of opportunity for shareholders and customers, and also for people to have more interesting jobs in the future. Thank you.